Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us and for listening in. I'm Frasier Armitage, sci-fi writer and reviewer for FanFiAddict.com. And joining me today is the creative team behind Solar, which is a sensational, cinematic sci-fi audio drama. We have Chris Porter, who is the creator, writer, director, producer, and composer for the show. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
And as well as Chris, we also have Jenny Curtis. Jenny is the director and the producer, and she stars in the show as the voice of Ali. Welcome, Jenny.
Hey, thank you for having us.
So great for you guys to meet with us today. It's a pleasure to chat to you about this. I'm really excited about digging into what Solar's all about. For any of our listeners who maybe haven't heard of the show before, what's the show like? What if you had to sum it up in a few words, or if you just wanted to tell us a little bit about it? What's your take on Solar?
Chris, you want to take it?
I'll take it. Solar, we like to say that it's a journey to the center of the universe that explores the vastness of the human spirit. It's about a spaceship that's been in close orbit to the sun when a huge solar flare hit it, and it knocked out all of its systems, and that flare went on directly to Earth. And so the people on board the spacecraft don't know if Earth is even there to be able to hear their cry for help, and they're stuck on separate sides of the ship trying to help each other. So it's this whole mess of everyone is stuck in isolation, trying to help each other and trying to be heard and be rescued before time runs out.
That is a great way to sum up the show, Chris, because the show is so huge, it's so big, that to kind of put it in sort of like a small catchphrase, as it were, is a huge task, because it just goes so many places, does this show, doesn't it? What was the inspiration behind it?
So I grew up enjoying science fiction. My father was a Trekkie. I'm not a Trekkie, but I grew up like in that ballpark of seeing things. And so I continued reading science fiction, watching science fiction. And so when I was thinking about what I would do if I had an audio drama, I was like, oh, let's do a science fiction. And I just started thinking of like, well, where would we go? Would we go to the star? Would we go to the edge of the universe? Would we go to Alpha Centauri? And all of a sudden I was like, why don't we go inward? Like there are a few shows that go inward towards the sun, but I was like, what would I do? And the immediate image was just of someone so small up against just an unfathomable force like the sun. And just thinking about that was really the genesis of the whole idea.
That's
that
brilliant.
Frailty and just how tiny we are, but how much we depend upon the sun.
Because going inwards is like a whole theme for the show, carries across it. It's fantastic. Yeah. What a great allegory. What about, was it always going to be an audio drama then, Jenny? Or, you know, when you found out about it, were you like, this would work as a book, as a movie, a TV show? Or was it always going to be audio?
It was always going to be an audio drama. Just on the book, movie, TV show thing, we like to say like a good story can be told across many mediums. So who knows? It could still be a book or a comic or a TV show. But originally, it was always supposed to be, let's explore this, pun intended, space in audio. And with Chris, especially because I'm just going to speak for him, he has a background in all things sound. He is a sound designer and he is a composer. And so the audio world comes very naturally to him, I think. And so thinking of how can we use this audio space in a new and exciting way was the Kickstarter for the show itself. And at Kurtco, which is our company that made the show, like we got into doing podcasting, but from the beginning of the company, we always knew we want to make a really cinematic audio drama. So from the beginning, this was our master plan.
No, that is, and the idea of it being cinematic is just, it's so fundamental to the experience of listening to Solar, isn't it? Because, I mean, I remember when in the first episode, straight away that this is different to other audio dramas that are out there for that reason. It's just the production alone is impressive. But out of all of the moments, out of all the standout moments, do you have one that you're like most proud of? Is there like a moment of the show, without giving any spoilers, that you would look at and say, well, actually, yeah, this is the thing that really sort of gets my spine tingling about the show?
it is physically impossible to pick one moment. We love this show so much. I could name every single moment in the show and talk about what way we're so proud of it. I will say I mean, I know you just listened to 12, so across the board, the episode, our finale episode,
we're really proud of that.
We're really proud of it.
We can't talk about it ever, but we were really proud of how it turned out.
But and Chris has this way of weaving his story, and he started threads in episode 1 that you kind of ignore, and then you kind of ignore when they come back in episode 7 or whatever, and then they're all kind of woven together, and by the end you realize there's this web in front of you that you didn't even realize he was weaving. And I cry every time I hear episode 12. I cried every time I read it. I cried every time we talked about it. Like, I love that episode. That aside,
I tried writing it for the record.
That aside, my favorite, like, oh my goodness moment is at the end of, I believe it's episode, is it 9, Chris?
Which one of the
can I swear on this podcast?
You can say whatever you like. I mean, you've already used a pun, Jenny, so some would argue that that's the worst thing you could commit.
I love puns. It's my thing. We have I'm just gonna call it a holy shit moment, but
then it is the end of 9.
Yeah,
the holy shit
cliffhanger
moment
at the end of 9, where our character says holy shit, which is why it's funny to call it a holy shit moment. It gives me so many thrills to like hear how our actors kind of built it, and we worked really hard to like set up this exciting, thrilling thing, and then finally it's revealed, and then the music kicks in and you go to credits. And usually, in general, as an audience member, cliffhangers make me mad. I want to keep watching. I don't want a cliffhanger. But my goodness, I love the end of that episode.
I'll say in terms of an earlier moment is we actually go on a couple spacewalks during the mission, and the first time we go on a spacewalk, some things go wrong and they have to reboot the ship essentially, and for about 10 seconds you're just in the helmet of one of the astronauts, and I that was one of the first moments where in the continual conversation of notes with our sound designer, I just wrote like, this is freaking awesome, you did such a good job, this is so good. It was like, whoa, that was the moment I was hearing in my head of just being like, just hearing someone breathe inside a helmet for a little while.
Yeah. And, the idea of being able to visualize what you're hearing is so strong in the audio drama. For me, I remember at the end of one of the episodes where one character is describing Mercury to another character, and just that whole scene, it was beautiful to imagine, but it was beautiful to listen to, and it was also beautiful just to be so immersed in, because what's going on for those characters at that time, it's a really important moment, and to be so immersed in it, I just thought it was so impressive. So, but when you said that there was like this moment, I was thinking, well, that could be like in any episode, Jenny. There's so many good bits.
And that's what I was going to say. Like, I was going to cut Chris off and be like, oh, but also there's, Jamal's monologue in episode 1. Also, there's Anne's monologue in episode 3, or Jess as the character. I rave about this too much. Chris will, have such a big head by the time we're done telling people about this show. But just I'm so obsessed with good writing, and I think it is getting fewer and far between. And so I'm genuinely a fan of this show, not just because I'm on the creative team, but like I love the way the story is written, and I think it's incredibly satisfying to get to spend time with characters and hear them talk, rather than be like, oh, the episode has to be 20 minutes. We got to like get it all done in 1 or 2 sentences and then move on, because you can't fall in love with your characters that way. So the fact that we were given the permission to sit with our characters for such extended amounts of time and hear them talk themselves through these issues was really important and really satisfying for me.
Yeah,
not to take
Sorry,
the conversation in a different direction. Oh, I'm so sorry. You go ahead, Frasier.
No, I was just going to say that what Jenny hit on is one of the absolute strengths of the show, isn't it? About just not just the characters, but this patient approach to it, where every single episode leads to something else, and it kind of goes deep, you know. So you have to listen to the end. You know, you have to listen all the way through. It's not one of these shows that you can just have on in the background. It's a show you have to listen to. Sorry, Chris, you were saying.
Oh, no. All I was going to say is that Jenny and I actually know each other from working together in an immersive theater company here in Los Angeles. And I'm very fortunate that my role in that company is getting to write a number of the scripts that they perform. And there's a certain beauty in coming from that background of writing in theater where it's like, it's just talking. Like, yeah, things are happening, but like the action is the actual conversation. And being able to pull that into the audio dramas, whereas a lot of audio dramas right now are just very like action. We have to see what's happening. And it was like, no, just listen for a second was actually really important to us.
Because there are so many moments in this as well where it's just quiet, and it's the pauses and it's the silences that really give it life. You know, it's a very what you're saying, Chris, about having to listen to the show. It's so bang on, because you get so much out of this. And I know that at the start of every episode it talks about listening in headphones. That is 100%. If you can listen in headphones, do it, because it's just amazing. How important was that to, you know, when you're writing it and when you're getting into it, knowing that it's you've set out on this project to make this huge experience for listeners? How much of that is a factor in the actual writing of the episodes? Are you always aware of that, Chris, or is it just one of those things that you work in afterwards?
It's definitely something to be aware of. Like, even I told this to Jenny when we were starting it. I was like, there's going to be artificial gravity because I want to hear footsteps. There's no real story-wise. It became a thing of like losing gravity was a part of the plot. But initially the choice to have artificial gravity was because I wanted to hear it. And I wanted to know when someone was walking into a room. And I wanted to know when someone was moving around as opposed to just floating in space. So like even considerations like that were initial decisions of just the creation of the world sonically, where it's like, I need to be able to hear this. We also knew that because it's a non-linear way that we tell the story for this adventure. And we knew that it would be important to not only be able to hear different spaces and recognize them as different spaces, but to be able to hear the same space before and after an event, the solar flare, as it were, to know where you were in time. So like the same sounds of things in Capsule 8 are there for both pre and post flare, but post flare, there's something wonky and you hear things getting destabilized. And it was things like that where we were like, we know we need to be able to hear these things. And that was 100% part of the storytelling.
You can't be serious,
Reboot Alley, now.
Why?
Pilot Davis, you know this ship better than anyone. We aren't in free fall. The reading is false. Reboot Alley. It's a glitch. It isn't real. Reboot.
Commander?
Do it.
Do it. Alley, please reboot all systems.
Please verify command to reboot all systems.
Reboot!
Searching for mission control. Mission control located.
Okay.
System successfully rebooted. All systems nominal.
The actual pacing of it too, like it was definitely written in like this character crosses the room, right? So it's not like wait 3 seconds here because something. He just wrote the stage directions, and then part of it goes out to our incredible sound designer CJ Drameller, who he would be go CJ. He would be like, what if they like, I can picture them like leaning back against the wall and crossing their arms, and like we would never have thought like, okay, how do we hear that? But he really engaged that brain of like, you hear this fabric rustle, and that means whether you're catching it or not, we know they're shifting from their right side to their left side. And it made all of those pauses that not pauses. They were all very full of life, and that's how we experience life, and that's how we experience visual mediums too. And like, there's no just like cut to the line, cut to the line, cut to the line, cut to the line, because there's not time to like really feel yourself in that space then. So especially in the edits, I think we all made each other a little bit crazy. We would give CJ notes like, can you push this dialogue back like half a second? Because I think this space is just a little bit too short. Like, so we were very micro focused on those details. But the being alive in the spaces was also incredibly important.
Yeah. The just to continue down the CJ praise route, we would have like email conversations of like, how heavy are the boots? Are they wearing clothes that are made from pleather, or are they wearing canvas type clothes? Like, are the walls made of plastic or metal? So like all of those, even after the script was written, was still being, refined and edited. And even then, he would come to us with some really brilliant ideas. Like, we always knew that Allie playing back ocean sounds would be important. And early on, when he was first reading some of the scripts to get familiarized with the story, he was like, I like this idea of Allie just spinning up all of these different ocean sounds in this one scene in episode 1. And I was like, that's a wonderful idea. And I wish I had thought of that. Please make that happen. And now it's in there. And it actually adds to the character depth of Allie, who's the AI system on board the ship, of like, she's trying to be so helpful that it's not helpful. And that's just a delightful aspect to her in the early episodes.
I want to talk about Allie. I want to talk about the characters. I want to go into all of that. Just before we move on from what Solar is like and what it's about. I mean, if you're listening to this for the first time and you're thinking, this show sounds amazing, it really is. It not just from the production side of things, but from the story side. If you're a fan of sci-fi, you're going to enjoy this show. But it's so unique, and it's not like any other audio drama that I've ever come across. So I was thinking about, if there's a group of sci-fi fans out there who enjoy sci-fi in another medium, is there anything that you can compare it to, be it books or movies or TV shows? Because I think the only comparisons I could come up with, they were so far removed from audio drama that I could only think of movies. It's that cinematic. Mm-hmm. So would you say like, oh yeah, our show is like a cross between this and this? Or, for any sci-fi fans out there who are thinking, what's it going to be like?
It's interesting because, yes, we definitely have those answers. And we could say, like, when we were pitching this story to people, we definitely had the, like, think this and think this and think this. But I think the beauty in, for one thing, what Chris did was he refused. I would try to get him to listen to some stuff. He refused because he did not want to be influenced by what's out there. So it is, thank you for saying it's unique. And that was very much intentional. I would say, in a totally roundabout way of inspiration, it is not like this show at all, but I always use the OA as example, because if you've seen that show, it's a Brit Marling show, and the pacing of the slow storytelling and the what people are going through and how they approach these interesting experiences ahead of them, that kind of feeling is very much in this story, even though the stories don't intersect at all. Depending on how you define intersecting.
To that point, 100%. Like Jenny was saying, like while I was working and writing it, I stopped consuming any sort of science fiction at all, which is sad because now I'm super super far behind. The fact is that like, it's not that the story is like, obviously there are certain tropes in science fiction and I'm aware of those and things like that there, but what we tried to do was take very specific slivers from things. So like we mentioned The Thing, and is our story anything like The Thing? Absolutely not. Like there's no alien or anything like that, but The Thing actually has a deep resonance with Solar because of the mindset that it leaves you in. Same with 2001, Solaris, Gravity, The Martian. Like they're all out there and in the ether, and you can find little parts and be like, oh, this part is like The Martian. But then there are other parts that have absolutely nothing to do with The Martian. So it's things like that of like, the inspiration is out there, but it's hard for us to be too one-to-one of like, this, we were trying to be the next Gravity is not what we were trying to do. We were like, we like this aspect of Gravity. Let's work with that.
We have had a lot of people tell us, and I don't know if it's bad to say I haven't seen it, but we have had a lot of people tell us they're getting Sunshine vibes. So
I mean, I watched it years ago. The only similarity, as far as I know, is the idea of going towards the sun. But they're going to the sun to reignite it after a previous mission has failed to reignite it. And then they encounter that ship, and then it becomes a whole drama of what happens on board the other ship. So I still think we're
different.
The sun was the common thing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We can both draw on the sun.
Anyway, there are different things that are pulled from different shows that are similar because there are common themes in genres, but we tried to do them differently or give them our own spin.
Yeah, and I think that it's such an achievement for the fact that it isn't like anything else in its medium. You know, there's no other audio drama you could say, oh yeah, listen to this and you'll get an idea of what Solo's like. It's fantastic. The atmosphere of the show is fantastic. So I would say that the comparison to Sunshine, I think probably why you're getting that is not just the idea of going towards the sun, but the atmosphere of intrigue, of what are these characters all about. You know, it's going deeper into the psychological aspects of it. You know, it's kind of like, for me, a little bit like if you crossed Castaway with Interstellar, you would get some kind of ballpark. You know,
honestly,
because
that's a great description.
it's so much more than just like a space thing, and it's so much more than just like a character thing. It's really poetic, and yeah. So I'm glad you made those comparisons of not really likening it to anything, but also likening it across the board, because so many sci-fi fans will just love what you've created. It's great. With regard to the non-linear aspect of the storytelling, that's one of my favourite things in sci-fi, is that you get to tell this story in a way that is just really intriguing and interesting.
I know you've never trusted me.
Margaret,
Someday, I hope you'll be able to look back at everything we've done and realize that I was only ever trying to help people. So stop. Stop it. Stop trying to interfere with us before it's too late.
Are you threatening me?
No, I'm helping you. You're making a mistake.
You don't know anything about me or my objectives on this mission.
I know more than you think. This mission cannot be delayed for everyone's sake. Do you understand?
I'm done with this conversation.
And I heard the recording.
What recording?
From the anniversary party. Right here in the loading dock. Right in front of this window.
I was interested as to whether you recorded it episode by episode or whether you recorded things chronologically, because the cast are amazing in it. But what was it like, the recording process?
Oh, I love that you think either of those things. Sorry, I just love that neither is the answer, but I love,
it's great.
love
it's
that
great.
you asked that.
I just want to point out that, like, because of the situation with COVID restrictions, I was watching all the recording sessions over Zoom and like making notes in the script and like offering some input whenever it was like, oh, I need you to hit this word because that was important in the script. But Jenny was able to be in the booth with our actors. And if it wasn't for her on hand leadership and guidance with those performers, the show wouldn't be anything of what it is. So I just wanted to voice that, first of all, that it was because of Jenny's particular direction in the voice recording that the show is so brilliant in that regard.
Thanks, Chris.
You bet.
Yeah. So the actual the way the schedule breaks down, we recorded each actor individually, as you know, Chris just said. So it wasn't necessarily effective for our time to go either chronologically or by episode. We kind of had to look at how long scenes were, which scenes we could fit into which recording sessions. So sometimes there was like, okay, we can only do this. There was a couple times we like with John, who plays Jamal, you know, we did episode 1, his monologue. We did that several times. And eventually we were like, we're going to spend an entire session on this because it's so important to us. So, you know, he got a whole, like a session is 4 hours. He got a whole 4 hours to really nail down that one scene. Other people, we were like, okay, if we do this scene, which could take us 20 minutes, and then this scene, which could take us an hour, and then this scene, which could take us 5, and mix and match, you know, people were doing episode 1, episode 9, episode 7, like it was all over the place. And I I think the reason it worked is because a lot of our actors do have backgrounds in theater. So being able to, and it's in film too, film jumps around all the time, but being able to truly imagine your circumstances in a matter of seconds and place yourself in the right headspace and go was really important. And they all really knocked it out of the park in being able to understand the story before they came in and then be able to jump around because we were asking them to. Performance is, I'm just going to keep talking because I can talk about this all day. Like I said, performance is so important to me because my initial background is as an actor. So I'm incredibly picky when it comes to thinking a performance is where we want it to be. And, we wanted to give the actors all the tools they could have to give knockout performances under these crazy circumstances of COVID and, running out of time, literally in production, running out of time and in the studio, like all of these things. And so rather than, we got some advice that was like, go line by line, have them record each line 3 times and then take the pick you like. And I don't think that, is good for actors. It might be better for editors, but we edited it. So I was like, we're going to make our lives harder and we're going to make their lives easier. And we would do things like run entire scenes. And I would be opposite them. When Chris says in the booth, I would be in the engineer side with glass between us. So it was still COVID friendly, but I'm on mic with them, talking to them so they can perform the whole scene all the way through. And I am acting my heart out, every single other character so that they have something to play off of. And we would do entire scenes multiple times. Then we would go back and pick up a page multiple times, or then we'd go pick up like a couple lines multiple times. So we jumped all over the place. But I think it really helped starting large and then coming down and down and down and down and down. And finally, like sometimes we would pick up certain sentences a couple times because they weren't quite what we wanted. But if we didn't have a clear vision of how we wanted it to sound on the other side, we couldn't have done that because it would have made everybody crazy, because it would have sounded more like we don't know what we want and we're all over the place, rather than we have a clear vision and we want to play and give you room to experiment, but like we're going to play until we find what we know will work in post. And so that was a long-winded way of saying, no, neither of the ways you thought we recorded, we did.
That's perfect. In terms of the for you having a background as an actor, you play Ali on the show, and your performance is, you knock it out of the park as Ali. I totally was bought into Ali, but she's such a huge part of what's going on. And what was it like, sort of almost having a scene with every single actor on the show? Because you basically, the ship is talking to everybody.
Yeah.
So what was in let's just run through this list of actors. So Helen Hunt, Alan Cummings, Stephanie Beatriz, Jonathan Bangs, and that's just like the main 4. There's all these amazing actors that go along as well. What was it like sort of performing with them?
It was unbelievable. So I can answer this question in 2 ways. I'll say the Ali side of it was less performing with them. Like, it's really cool to hear my voice in the thing. The actual recording their side where I was acting with them and doing the other characters, that was, I still can't wrap my head around it. The first time we ran a scene with Alan Cumming, and I was like, you guys, we have that recorded, right? I just did a scene with Alan freaking Cumming. And it was, what a dream. It was so exciting because all you want is to work with people who inspire you to be better. And our cast was so phenomenal and so much fun to work with. So the fangirl side of me that loved acting opposite these people was, she was alive and kicking. I had such a great time. The process of creating Ali, who had more lines in this show than any of us realized.
Yeah. She's the only character that appears in every scene.
She she talks a lot. And I think, when Chris and I originally were like, yeah, of course, like I can play Allie and that's great and whatever. I
asked her to play Allie from the get-go. Like I was like, hey, I want you to help me make this and I want you to be Allie, just so that you know.
And it was, and I love her and I was so excited. And then it came down to scheduling and we were like, holy crap, she has so many, like we are in the set, like in sessions over and over and over again. And the thing about, I think I said this already, of I'm very particular. I am very hard on performances in a good way where I expect the best. Take that and turn it on myself, times it by 1,000,000. So I know I made everybody crazy because I was truly obsessed with getting Allie right. And there would be certain things where they'd be like, great, we got it. And be like, no, that half a tone that just happened in my voice was too human, or Allie would never go there or whatever. So it took a while.
She was very annoyed she had to breathe. And we were like, we'll delete it later. Like, it's okay if you breathe.
And I understand editing. I don't know why I can't, like, I couldn't wrap my head around it. But yeah, it was so much fun to find her cadence. And I think we did not start recording me first. We probably should have, because we could have gotten her out of the way. But like, I had the gift of, because I was acting opposite a bunch of actors, we got through several sessions before I started, which almost gave me the time to rehearse. So I really found her when we were in other actors' sessions because I was practicing my voice unintentionally. I mean, I was focusing on them, but like I found where she sits organically, like in my actor self. So I think I really had the benefit of much more rehearsal time than everybody else.
And this is going to be shameless plug here. We if you go on Apple, you can purchase a subscription for I think just $2.99, and we actually have like 8 behind the scenes episodes talking about various aspects, and we do go really in depth on Allie, talking with Jenny and one of our executive producers and myself about like, where did Allie come from, what was her motivation, how did she happen to be, and it kind of so you can find out more there. But one thing that I was brought up while we were talking about that I have to always remember is the temperature readings, because Allie isn't always fully connected to the conversation. She's not a full human being, sentient AI kind of a thing. She's programmed to talk a certain way, and so we had to really clarify what tone of voice she was helping with. But one of the things that she does in her broken state is give out temperature readings, saying what the temperature is in this capsule here and what temperature is in this capsule there. And that was like the weird ASMR part of the show where like Jenny would just have to go in and be like, it's 107
Capsule
degrees
temperature
Celsius.
is currently 107 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever.
Yeah. And it was so mind numbing, and it was so necessary for the world building, but we were just like, okay, it's another temp reading. Okay.
I will say for those, they're not as uniform as I want them to be. So anybody who's a true fan of this show, if you're listening to like way in the background and Allie's giving a temp read, know that I'm not 100% satisfied with how.
That being said, the decision was also.
Allie's glitching. Allie's glitching, so you have it perfect. Yeah,
that's it.
Yes.
I made this choice of always having the temperatures fluctuate, so it could never just be the same recording over and over again. Which, it's easy in the writing stage to be like, "Oh, that's great, that's neat," and then when you're actually doing it, you're like, oh, "Why did I do that? It's so much more work than I thought it was going to be."
You don't get ends, do you? There won't be any future crews. I'll be lucky if I can save Jamal. If we don't make it home, you're gonna fall into the sun, and everything will have been for nothing. All of it. And I'll have spent 2 hours following a small blue light that only I can see, and none of it will matter. None of it matters. I'm going to bed.
It will matter to Jamal. I am unable to verify Jamal's claims, but you can.
That isn't fair. Don't put that on me.
You're worried about his mental stability.
I'm worried about my mental stability. I might be hallucinating too.
How would you know?
I wouldn't.
But if Jamal has been seeing ghosts...
There are no such thing as ghosts, Allie. Stop. What do you want? What do you want from me? I just want to close my eyes and be gone forever like I was never there, and then I wouldn't have felt this way, and I wouldn't have let anyone down, and I wouldn't have cared so much.
If you're enjoying this conversation, listening to it, and you wanted to find out more, as Chris says, there's a behind the scenes. There's loads of them, and you should check it out. It's definitely worth getting that subscription to be able to do that.
And we call it the solar panel, so we're clever. You say puns are the worst.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm personally, I'm going to go on record here, and I'm going to say I love a good pun, but I'm speaking for the listeners. I've got to present both sides. But no, the solar panel, it's like a show within a show. You should check it out.
Yeah.
Just on terms of sort of, Chris, you said that you always had Jenny in mind for this role. What was it like finding out about, these other actors who have been cast for this thing that you'd written? Because the cast isn't, we can't just not talk about the cast of this show.
Oh, let's talk about the cast. Yeah.
So how did you feel?
The first name talent that we secured was Stephanie Beatriz, and when I found that out, I was actually out on a walk and my phone binged and I looked at the email and I was like, holy crap. Holy crap. And I actually just sat on a neighbor's, a little stone cropping that was my size. And I immediately called Jenny, and I actually got to tell Jenny because she hadn't seen the email yet. And I was like, holy crap, we got Stephanie Beatriz. That's incredible. And then just that kept happening. It wasn't always on a walk, but it kept being like, are you sure Alan Cumming said yes? Are you sure Helen Hunt said yes? Is this actually happening? And it was just really cool because, they would get the offer and the episodes that they were in to decide if they wanted to do it. And just knowing that they had read just a small part and they were like, yeah, this seems like a worthy thing to spend my time on. I was just that A, puts so much pressure on my head, and then B, makes me feel so awesome because it's they think that this project is worthwhile like the rest of us do. That's how it felt from my point of view.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially with Stephanie. With Stephanie, we did have a casting director who had set that up. Mormon Bowling Casting was who we were working with. So it was after a ton of back and forth and trying to figure out how we were moving forward. And it was a really complex time of, is this happening? Does anybody have any interest in acting in audio dramas? We think so, but we don't know. We're trying to do something. It was just fraught. And so getting that call from Chris, when we found out our actors were cast, I have such clear memories of I was out at a Mexican restaurant eating a burrito when Chris called me and told me we got Stephanie. And I viscerally, I remember just standing. I had walked out to the parking lot and I just was looking up at the sky being like, oh my God, we're going to space. This show is happening. And it was so affirming, like Chris said, of these people believe in the show the way we do. And that is everything. And we know we love it, but having other people be excited about it too really lit a fire. And so, when we got the call, when we got Alan, his agent called me directly. And I think I screamed in my apartment on my own for a little while before I called everybody to say Alan Cumming is in, because I still can't believe it. With Helen, we got an email. There was a lot more back and forth with Helen's people, and we got the email while I was standing in line to get my first shot of the COVID vaccine. And so I was already in this really weird space, and everything is, what is life? And then suddenly I'm like, oh my God, this is news. And the line was long. So I just kept, turning to the person I had gone with and been like, is this happening? Did I get this? Is this happening? And everybody else, we went through an audition process. Those 3 were offers because obviously we don't need them to audition for this show. And everybody else were a smattering of people we have worked with before who are all incredibly talented and we want to work with them, but everybody had to audition so we could find the right people for these roles, and a few people we had never met in our lives, and the two Taj and Eli. So Colin Ford, who plays Eli, and Danielle Pinnock, who plays Taj, are wonderful people who were complete strangers to us, and we got, by fluke of them submitting on our breakdown and us being like, well, we had already closed breakdowns, but sure, why not? We've got a couple more days. You can send in your auditions late. And of course, those two auditions were the best of the bunch. And Danielle now is a series regular on the American version of Ghosts. And so she kind of blew up right after doing our show. And Colin is off shooting I don't think I can actually say, but he's shooting a show somewhere in America about something that I can't say. But
he's making a movie.
he's making stuff. But it's so interesting to have these levels of people we've worked with, where it's the people we know and love, and have this. We talk about this all the time, how beneficial it is to have a common vocabulary with the people you're working with. And that was so soul-filling in and of itself. And then to have these other working actors who witnessing how they approach the work when you don't necessarily know them was really interesting to learn how to communicate quickly and efficiently with them. And then working with celebrities when there's a lot of agents and lawyers and rules and contracts involved. It was just various levels of a lot of learning, but also a lot of inspiring work. So anyway, we got incredibly lucky with the cast.
Yeah,
and
as a footnote to how lucky we got with it, we when we secured Stephanie Beatriz as one of the leads, that was pre In the Heights, pre Encanto, pre her rocketing into Twisted Metal now and all that stuff like that, where it's wow, we got her right before everyone else realized how amazing she truly was, and that's just really fortunate on our end.
She's had a hell of a year.
Worked out that way. Yeah.
Well, everyone in the project has had an amazing year. It's by the sound of it. I think the thing that struck me about all of the cast is that you've got all these amazing performers, but not a single one of them is just a big name who's just phoning it in. Every single one just knocks it out the park with their performance. And I know you said that was really important to you, Jenny, but it's they're not doing things they've done before. They're doing new things, and that's what's exciting. So you're listening to Helen Hunt in a way you've not really heard Helen Hunt be before, and Alan Cumming in a way that you've not really heard him before. This is all new. And Stephanie Beatriz and Jonathan Bangs, they're the heart of the show, and they smash it. So yeah, it's great.
I'm so glad you got that from it, because it's also interesting, because the thing about art forms is everybody's opinion is going to be different. There are people who hate the performance. We've heard from some strangers, they hate John's performance, and I think they're out of their minds. John Bangs came out of, for you guys, for anybody who doesn't know him, we've known him for years, but he came out of nowhere and knocked this thing out of the park in a way that no one else could have done, because holy moly, that guy. He literally, I've said this before, he just cracked his heart open and left it at the mic. And I know there's maybe people don't trust it, because when you're hearing it in audio, you're putting different thoughts into what they might be doing. But I will tell you, everything you're hearing, none of that is fake. He just left it there on the floor in the studio, and it was...
And literally the floor sometimes. There were some intense scenes when he had to be tired, and he would literally sit in the corner of the booth, and they'd set up the mic in front of him.
Yeah.
He was performing it. He was living it in the booth.
For 6 years, while my mother worked in the library, I planned a secret life without her knowing. And in one afternoon, all of it came crashing down. One of the books I checked out fell to the back of my locker. The late notice from the library went out. My mother saw it, checked my history, and I came home to a list. The Challenger disaster, January 28th, 1986. Colombia, February 1st, 2003. Vladimir Komarov, 1967. Michael J. Adams, also 1967. The three on board Soyuz 11, 1971, and it went on and on and... You still want to throw your life away and go to space? My mom asked. Yeah, Mom. If God made the universe, then why should I be scared of it?
Would you like me to provide a list of all space disasters?
I know it by heart, Allie. My mother burned it into me. Every name, every disaster, every possible way to die. My mother thought all these men and women would be deterrents to me. Reasons why I shouldn't follow my dream. But they sacrificed their lives for something, right? They risked their lives for something, anything. Life doesn't have to be contained by the bounds of gravity, does it? Does it?
I am unable to answer the question.
No one will ever know if they thought it was worth it because those people who sacrificed their lives are gone.
Yeah. So, it was just so much fun. And anyway, I could go on and on and on about John, but he gave this thing his all, as so many people did. And
we're
I don't
really
think
proud of all the people up and down. They all really gave it to us.
It wouldn't be what it is if people hadn't really put their heart into it, which maybe we were lucky because there was a pandemic and there wasn't a lot going on otherwise. So it was something for people to focus on, but people put everything they had into this project, and it was, I don't know. I think it turned out pretty neat.
Yeah, it's. I would say pretty neat is probably the understatement of the year. But I think the thing with it is that, so we've talked about performance, we've talked about the sound design and everything like that. Just in terms of character, is there let's try to forget about the performances of the characters. Just in terms of characters, is there one that is a little bit closer to your heart than others? If you had to pick one that was this is the one that I really connected with through the show. Have you got a personal favorite?
I know Chris's answer, so I'm going to let him go second because it's probably better than mine. But no, long story short, same as is there a favorite moment? No, there can't possibly be. I love everything about this story and I love all of these characters. But Allie, of course, she is me and I am her. So I absolutely love her and her trajectory and how we figured out how she could have a character arc when she is an AI. I loved that. But when it comes down to the characters and what they have to say, they all have such unique perspectives, and they all have a moment. Our main characters all have a moment, at least one, in the series where they get to have essentially a soliloquy and really share a side of them that other characters aren't seeing. And every single one of those affects me in a way that I need to hear as a person. So I consider all of these characters my friends. The characters, not the actors. I consider these characters my friends. And so I love them dearly, not in spite of, but because of how fatally flawed they are, because they're human and they all have a lot of crap they're working through. So all of them is my answer. Go, Chris.
When I'm starting to write the scripts, I can't really successfully write a character until I identify the part of myself in that particular person. And that's not always comfortable, especially with characters who make really bad choices, because then I find out, I'm making really bad choices too. So definitely there's a part of me in all of them, but I've said it from the get-go. At least to Jenny, I've told this before, is that Ren and Jamal are definitely written from the two halves of my brain, where it's one is using logic, one is using their heart, and they have to somehow find a way to communicate with each other. So a lot of the things that Jamal says to Ren and that Ren says to Jamal are things that I've said to myself, where I'm I need to keep reminding myself of this, or I have to think about it this way, or I can't deal with that emotion at this point in time. So it is kind of a record of that. So I have to say that those two in particular are near and dear to me, because to me, it is literally conversations I've had with myself.
If you're writing from the heart, Chris, and you're writing about two halves of your brain, people who have listened to the show will probably have questions about sort of, you know, how much of you is been brought into the show. And I just have the question that will be on everybody's lips is, did you ever have an ant farm?
Great question. I had an ant farm for I think about 3 weeks when it was at that age where like you thought it would be the coolest thing ever, and then your ants, like you have 6 ants and they just die, and then your parent is like, why do I have a bunch of dead ants on my shelf? And you're like, I don't know, I stopped feeding them, I guess. So like I had those. Weirdly enough, the story that Jessa shares about her cat, her emotionally traumatized cat, that one is actually real. I actually do. I own. I don't know if he's on my bed right now. Anyway, point is, I have a traumatized cat that I had to take a lot of time to emotionally connect with. So that story is real. The ant farm is not, sadly, as far as pets go.
It's taken all of my self-control not to ask Jenny how many ants there are in the ant farm. It's
632 or 633. Sorry.
There it is. No, I love there's so much in it that's relatable about not just the characters, but about the circumstances, and that's kind of genius from you as a writer as far as it goes, because you're writing about these huge, larger than life things, and yet you somehow find a way to make it relatable. And so, you know, there's bound to be a lot of you in the show. Is it the same with the music? You know, because obviously we've talked about characters, but music is such a huge character in this, in setting the atmosphere and creating the intrigue. You know, what was it like sort of composing for this as well?
So it was interesting because I knew I was always going to compose for it, but there wasn't a point in me composing anything until we actually had like the set time codes. So I would know like, this needs to happen here. This needs to happen here. So it was this moment of just saying like, I'll take care of that later. Like people have asked me before, like, you know, were you thinking about the score while writing it? And the answer was like, no, because at the end, I'm going to feel what emotion is missing and try to build that into the music so that it helps push the story forward. I'll also say that I took real concerted efforts to not write themes for people, but themes for ideas. And there's nothing wrong with that. The idea of like, you know, the Luke Skywalker theme, you know, the Jedi theme, things like that is cool in Star Wars. I was just like, okay, what if we have a theme that means the sun? And what if we have a theme that means humanity? And what if we have a theme that means uncertainty? And I tried to score it that way, which I thought would be really interesting to draw parallels from different scenes. It's pretty early on in episode 2. There's a cue that happens called metallic dust. And it's when they're on the outside of the rover. This isn't spoiling anything. And the magnetic wheels are drawing in metallic dust. And I will say that like that cue returns almost verbatim in a much later episode 9. I'll give you a big hint. And it's meant to draw a conclusion of like, this is like this, even if you don't realize it's the same music cue. Hopefully subconsciously you're like drawing that conclusion of, oh, this has happened before, and I should find out what it is thematically that's tying this moment to this other moment.
Yeah, because the thing is that there's such a huge scope that you know, in atmosphere in the show. Some moments are very tender, some moments are very suspenseful, and you I guess when you're listening to it, you're not really aware of all the ingredients that go into that. But just if you are listening to it through headphones and you can pick out the music, everything is geared towards you having that experience as a listener of, you know, being in that moment with them. And it is the whole thing comes together in a way that it's a very experiential and an immersive listen to. And I think a lot of that is down to music. Would you say that if you are going to be putting together an audio drama, for any of our listeners who are out there thinking, right, okay, I want to find out about audio drama here, would you say that music is one of those like essential things to get right if you're going to make it a success?
Yes, but with a caveat. Because I feel that you can do it very successfully if you decide not to use music. There is a world where that makes a huge amount of sense. You don't need music for it to be good. But it needs to be a choice. It needs to not be an afterthought. One of the things that drives me nuts, but I have to rely on it because it's part of the world we live in, are stock libraries where people just will slap music into things. And it's like, that needs to be a choice. That should not be the alternative. Like, it should be like, hey, if I'm going to use this music here, it needs to be for this purpose. If I can't hire a custom composer, I need to figure out what it is that I'm doing. But having a composer to help guide that story is definitely a huge part of it. Subconsciously, just for the listeners. Sorry, Jenny, I think I cut you off.
No, I mean, I was basically going to say along the lines, same thing. If it's an active choice, I think I have this conversation a lot too of like, the thing about it being an art form is everybody's going to feel differently. Everybody's going to have something that resonates with them differently. For some people, music is not their thing. And if that's the way they want to tell their story, fine. For me, music is really important. So yeah, if you want something that resonates with me, put some great music in it. But it really depends on how people tell their story. And the thing that excites me the most is when I see a well thought out choice. If you can tell that like choices have been made rather than people being like, I wrote down some words and then we recorded it and I'm putting it out and whatever. And there's nothing really thought through about it. Then how is it going to resonate with anyone? Because how does it resonate with them? But I think music is the most powerful tool in audio because it's a audio thing. I don't know.
It just goes straight to the heart with music.
Yeah.
You don't need dialogue to make someone cry when you've got a beautiful piece of music. And this is the thing about solo, which you're saying about it being a choice, is that there are so many choices that are built into making this feel cinematic. Even from the point of view of you've got these screen actors that are performing it, you've got this, you've got this huge story that you're telling, you've got this music that you're bringing into it. The whole thing sort of comes together to give that experience. So I guess with what you're saying is that if you understand the concept of what you're trying to deliver, then you can make those choices that are going to get you the best product that comes out of it, which is great advice for anyone who's starting up in audio drama.
Rover module online.
Jamal, you there?
I'm here.
Allie, there's no way to get him this video feed, right?
Correct.
I'll look out the window.
Tell me if there's some debris sneaking up from behind.
Roger. I'll let you know when I have visuals on the rover.
Magnetic adherence and stabilization activated. Unlocking from tracked external system. Rover fully deployed. Would you like to activate remote override?
Yes.
Allie should handle it.
I'm not chancing this thing on glitchy software. Booting up the camera. Allie, record all data collected.
Yes, Ren.
Ren? Did you rewrite your naming protocol?
Well, you never came up with a name for me.
Displaying camera feed on Capsule 1 main console.
Oh my god.
What?
All my windows face out. Allie drew up schematics of the damage, but seeing it now.
Some questions about your experiences, because we've talked about how experiential this is for a listener, but for you as a creative team and your experiences in putting it together, once it's all done and you just sit back and you hit the play button and you listen to it, how does that feel?
I don't know that I've hit a point where I can just sit back and hit a play button at this point. It is still in my DNA. I'm still very close to it. Also, I won't go into details, but I had some personal things happen earlier this year that give certain weight and resonance to the show that was not necessarily intended when I first wrote it, but so now when I listen to it, it draws up all of those personal memories. So definitely for me, I am still way too close to be able to answer that question. I'm sorry.
Well, for me, I don't think it's a sit back thing, but it's also I
will say I'm immensely proud of it.
Yeah.
That's not a part of it. Yeah.
Immensely proud of it, but it is something that I think it's done in a way that I am able to, for the most part, some things stick out at me still, but I am able to lose myself in the story. And I have listened to these episodes way too many times to count. I have listened and over listened. I could perform the whole show for you right now, single-handedly. But there is something in hearing it, and I'm able to remove myself and listen to it as a listener, which I find it an incredibly moving story. But also to hear moments in this show that we this wasn't an easy process in the development phase. You get opinions and conversations and people testing you and not sure if your idea is a good idea or whatever. And there's a lot of stuff in this show that we really had to fight for because we really believed in it. And we were being told not to use it or to cut it or to shorten it or whatever. And so I will hear how well it turned out. And I think the pride in overcoming the challenges of production, I mean, that's moving all on its own, because it was a real hill to climb making this show happen with such a small team and people who, as Kurtco, this was our first audio drama, so there was a lot riding on it, and I think the pride and the appreciation and the gratitude for what we were able to accomplish is, I mean, like I say, I cry all the time, but like I cry every time I listen to any episode of the show because there are moments that I just love.
Just to share an addendum, like just a random side tangent, but that's related, is the first draft of the first 4 episodes were written just prior to the pandemic. And so then the pandemic hit, we all had to go into lockdown, and all of a sudden I'm writing a show about people who are stuck in isolation, and I'm living with my emotionally traumatized cat. And I'm like, well, this is a new experience that I need to now recalibrate and actually like figure out how this works in my brain now, because it's very much changing how the characters would voice their isolation grief. And it was just, that's part of the interesting tact of like why it's like the show kind of has this. It was just to Jenny's point of like it's there in the gratitude, and it was a long process and it was difficult. And so it's hard to remove myself from it.
And it's such a personal show because it touches on so many personal themes that it is. Yeah, listening back to it, I can understand your answers because it will mean something so much to you personally. But I think that will be true for many listeners as well. You know, they will find something personally to connect with in this, which is a real testament to how well it's been put together. And if this is the first audio drama that Kurtco Media have put together, I imagine that you learned an awful lot during the process of making it. If you could go back, so let's say at the end of this process, you get to the end, it's all wrapped up, it's all finished. If you could go back to day one with all of the knowledge you've acquired, and if you had the option of being able to give yourself a little bit of advice, is there anything that you would say to yourself going into this to say, it would be good to know this or good to know that?
It would be good to know that the pandemic is coming if it's coming. That would be great.
Yeah. I would say there are ways we would do scheduling differently. There are ways we would do approvals process differently, make sure people are on board with things way earlier on than we made sure people were on board with things. But I think, and, you know, I'm probably lying to myself here because there's a lot more I would change. But we had a friend who was giving us some advice early on. And his advice was really like, trust yourself, tell the story you want to tell. And that is the best piece of advice that I can give to anybody else as well, because trusting that we know how to tell this story and we know what this story is going to be. I mean, the only thing I would really do is go back and say, like, it's going to be okay. People are going to listen to it. Because that was a real source of tension of we're putting everything we have into the show, and what if nobody listens to it? And people did, which means everything. It means so much to us that we had an audience continue to have an audience for this show. Yeah.
I think that's absolutely perfect advice. I don't know that I have any advice other than like get some extra Tums, because you're going to be stressing out about every decision that's made.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay to scream into a pillow once in a while.
That's right. But I thought that was beautifully said, Jenny. It was the idea of it's going to be okay and people are going to listen. That was the thought process. It was the thing that Jenny and I had secretly been telling each other. We didn't want to worry all the people who wanted us to get a good amount of downloads. But I was like, if we put this out there and I get one response that someone has heard it, and I mean like actually heard it and felt that it resonated with them, then we will have succeeded. And hearing people like you and getting some of the responses and reviews from the people who have posted things online has just been like so deeply, deeply rewarding to know that like this cry into the void has been answered, not by mission control, but by the audience. And that is wonderful.
That's a really nice way of putting it. And I think that is for any sci-fi writer, that is the thing that you look forward to, is, being able to share what you've come up with and being able to share this vision with others. And the fact that others are responding to it must be such a joy for you. And for everybody at Kirkco who's put this together, it must be so nice just to think, yeah, it's reaching people. And there will be a review that's connected to this. So if you're listening and thinking, well, what's it like? Where's the review? Just scroll down, you'll find it. With regard to sci-fi, just in general, obviously as a sci-fi writer, I'm looking at sort of what to write next. What the future of this genre is going to be, and how important do you think audio drama is going to be to the future of science fiction? Because just personally speaking, I think it is such a perfect bridge between imaginations, and you can imagine things in an audio drama that you may not be able to put on a screen. How important do you think audio drama is going to be to the future of sci-fi?
Vastly important. I mean, exactly for the reason you were saying. And vice versa. I mean, sci-fi for audio dramas, the most successful audio dramas right now are the horror ones and the sci-fi ones. I mean, horror because everybody loves to be on the edge of their seat, and sci-fi because it is the world in which you can invent anything, and stories are so broadly different, but also creative, and there's just so much exploration to be done. And so where sci-fi is influencing audio drama, I mean, that's what you want, because that's what it takes to make a great story, is a space to go find something new and different and exciting and unique. How audio drama will influence sci-fi as a genre, I think it's the same in any medium of a genre excels when stories are being told. So sci-fi will continue to grow and change as long as there are audio dramas and books and movies and anything where people are inventing and creating and imagining.
I think one of the reasons why podcasts and audio dramas right now are so exciting is because it is the audience being able to directly access the entertainment that they want at any given moment. And that's just something that hasn't existed in any entertainment medium for quite some time. And that's something that we're just learning from the streaming services, from, all these, like, people are able to say, this is what I want, give me this. And so I think that might be the biggest influence on the future of sci-fi in regards to podcasts, is just that it's somehow more accessible to everyone, not only to consume, but to make. It's, it's not necessarily cheap, but it is much cheaper than trying to make a feature-length film. To be able to produce your own audio drama, which means you can do things without having to go through necessarily like a major studio or something for approval. So it somehow is both giving you more freedom, but also more power to choose what it is that you want to consume.
And in terms of storytelling, it's great because you can, as is exemplified in this show, you can tell stories that are without limit to how deep they can go or how far they can go. And I think shows like this hopefully will be, you guys will hopefully be on the cusp of a new wave of what we'll see in audio drama as far as sci-fi goes. Because when you're looking down the lists of what's available, even just looking at the tab and just seeing all of these high profile actors and the people being involved with it, it's almost like, in a way, it's helping to put it on the map. So you should be really proud of that, because if this is the next big thing for sci-fi, then you guys got there first. It's which is great. The only other thing that we like to do at the end of these kinds of episodes, whenever we get creators in, it's always good just to chat about the kinds of things that you're consuming. I know, Chris, you said that you have been in a void of sci-fi for a long while, but maybe let's start with you. Is there any kind of audio dramas or any kind of sci-fi that you are currently enjoying?
Well, I I'm took a little break from listening to actual podcast narratives. So I've definitely been listening to more like comical podcasts as far as what I've been consuming, just to help clear out my brain a little bit. But as far as like, I mean, pretty much anything on TV, in that vein is up for grabs now. Like I'm going to start watching For All Mankind because I'm very far behind on that. But I've been watching Barry and I've been loving Barry. And even though it has nothing to do with science fiction, just the things you can learn from someone who is really telling a focused story and is directing it so well as Bill Hader is like, wow, I can learn a lot from that I can apply in my show, even if I'm not writing anything close to what Barry is in the world of entertainment. And I've just been really enjoying some of the movies. Oh, as far as a movie that came out, Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's a movie that came out recently that is actually, I think, sci-fi in a very different way than I think we're used to seeing. But it actually is the same thing of like, it's just about a dysfunctional family. Like, yes, there's multiverses, but that's because it's about a dysfunctional family. And that's kind of how I tried to approach Solar. Yes, it's all these things, but it's about connection and trauma. And like, so I felt a huge resonance with Everything Everywhere.
Yeah. Excellent. And what about you, Jenny? Have you got any recommendations or anything like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I will say, based off of my current listening and watching and whatever, because we are hoping to continue working in this world of Solar. You know, there are no announcements yet, but like we're hoping to continue living in this sci-fi world. So I've taken a slight break from sci-fi just because it's where our heads have been at for so long. And I'm kind of playing in more comedy and more fantasy. I was just on an airplane. I went to and from New York, so I had a while to kill, and I listened to a show called Impact Winter from Audible, and it's about vampires. And I will say I really enjoyed that, and it gave me hope to hear another show really use the tools we were talking about of good performances, great music, well-written story. And I really enjoyed listening to that show. I just started re-listening to a friend of ours show called Carcerum, and that's a fantasy
I was about to say we should mention that
audio drama.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's an audio drama that has just a ton of amazing voice actors in it, and screen actors. Jane Lynch is in it, and Neil Flynn, who was on Scrubs, and it's a great show, and it's heartwarming and moving. And same thing, they have an original score for it. They really leaned into quality performances. So hearing shows that give me hope that, like you said, the medium is leveling up continues inspiring us to keep moving forward. And as for TV, like I don't sit still well and watch things, which is, I think, why audio drama is so good for me. I can listen to it while I'm doing something or walking or whatever. TV, I'll just put on something that I've watched thousands of times. And I'm rewatching, I think, Monk right now, and, watching him solve crimes. And Brooklyn Nine-Nine I watched the other day just because I love Stephanie and I can't get enough of her. So silly comedies and that, but that's always like, if I'm watching TV now, it's very much like put it on in the background and try to just zone out, because we have thought so hard for so long. I need a couple days to turn my brain off.
And that's what entertainment, that's all part of the spectrum of entertainment, isn't it? Sometimes you want something that you can really sort of dig down into, and then sometimes you just want to put something on to just enjoy it, so it's great to hear that you guys have got some good recommendations for people out there, and these are recommendations that go across the board as well. So yeah, that's really great. Thank you so much for joining me today and for chatting about Solar and about your experiences with it and how it was putting it together. Just before we end, can you just tell any listeners out there who at this point in time will no doubt be itching to get started on episode 1, how can they listen to it?
Oh, it is available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. I always go through the whole list because why not? You can find it on Apple Podcasts. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on Stitcher, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Apollo, Pocket Casts, Podbean. I'm running out. I know
Doing
there are a
better than
bunch
I
more.
did.
I heart. But yeah, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find our show. Just type in Solar. Hopefully it'll come up quite easily. If not, type in Solar and Kurtco or Solar and any of our actors. Or you can find our website is solarthepodcast.com. Our social media is Solar the Podcast on Instagram and on Twitter. Yeah,
there is a
we're not
Solar
hard to
Facebook
find.
page, but
and Facebook. I always
Yeah.
forget about Facebook because Facebook is old school.
it's for old.
We are the old people, but
I
still,
know.
you know.
Everyone on Facebook
it's
right
out
now
there.
is just like, that's it, I'm done. No. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us and for being part of the conversation today, and all the best in what you're making next and in your future endeavors at Kurtco. And yeah, for everybody who's listening, Solar, it really is an incredible listening experience. So
Thank you
go
so
check
much.
Thank you
it
so
out.
much.
Thanks, Frasier.
Thanks.